You're such an asshole.
We got a good question because it's a paradox he hits upon, or a catch 22, which is real. It's not he's not making it up or missing anything. But a lot of people in the past have, well, how do I talk to people, whether that's guys or girls? And the best way to talk to people is you don't exist. You shut up about yourself and you ask them questions about themselves. And I've had general rules, for every question you ask someone, you're allowed to say something about yourself if that thing is germane to the topic of conversation and relevant. Or you don't even have to talk about yourself. You just talk about something that you want to talk about that is germane and observation. In other words, the vast majority of people, when they're having conversation, boys or girls, are just people waiting their turn to talk about themselves. And if you could get to the selfless point of realizing the conversation is not about you, it's never going to be about you. And ultimately, when you say something about yourself, nobody really listens. Therefore, it's pointless. If you could be that guy or gal who asks other people about them or says something very poignant, or especially funny, truly funny or insightful, and those two kind of often coincide, then people start to like you. And ironically, they don't even know you because you didn't say anything about yourself. They like the way you make them feel. And so this kid's got a really good question. He's a younger man. I won't say how old, but a significantly younger man. But he's doing darn good for such a young age, because I wish I had learned this when I was younger. Hi, Cappy. No preference among video or email. We'll do video because it's going to help other people out. I've improved at asking people questions about themselves, which has been apparent by them showing more interest in me. Yeah, but do they really show interest in you? Or is it they just like you because you talk about, see? If there is no you, you don't exist. By nature, I can be pretty hard-headed, jaded, and aloof, and can come across as an asshole. I don't want this to sound like I'm asking for a computer program with the girlsa, but my question is the following. In general, how do you recommend balancing between an aloof, not nice guy with women and get them talking about themselves without me asking a lot of questions that make it seem like I'm very interested in them? Thanks for everything. So, well, give me some examples. And the examples he's given me in his real life, which he wants to keep anonymous for obvious reasons, it shows proof that he's succeeding with men and women. And he has a date with a gal, so he's doing it. But let's go ahead and address this balance here. All right. First, the whole point of learning conversation is that you get people, for lack of a better word, hooked on you. In this case, with a girl, let's just say you're dating a girl, you want to get her hooked on you, but you want them to get to like you, ironically, not knowing you. So this is more of a first time meeting the person, like you're meeting a girl at a bar or a restaurant, a first date, coffee, asking her out at a club, or business acquaintances. You're golfing with, I don't know that many people like golf in business anymore, but anytime you're in a group, I'm imagining a group environment, you're at a party where you get to know someone, you talk about themselves. It's to get them feel comfortable. I don't necessarily mean trust you, but to get them to open up. And understand I have no malicious aims. And then you get some dirt on them and you got them. And then you can plow back at your bachelor pad. It's not that. It's going to make things easier for you in the long run if people like you. And so it is an initial hurdle. And the paradox, or where the contradiction comes in, is that, especially as it pertains to girls, because you don't want to seem too interested, is once you get to that, past that point, like, oh, they kind of at least think they like you, then it should naturally fall into and gravitate towards natural conversation, where they should ask you about you. And you said you've gotten to that point where things just naturally turn into conversation. And a girl, I don't think I'm exposing anything here, she says, you ask a lot of interesting questions. That's great. You did it perfectly. And so it's to prime the pump. It's to get regular conversation, because you don't want to have like rules and schemes and praxeologies, if-then statements and a strategy every time you're interacting. You just want to be able to hang out with people like you would your buddies. And so if you could get girls to feel comfortable around you because you're asking questions about them originally, that's fine. But inevitably, and this happens to all guys, is the girl has a responsibility to also carry her weight in conversation. because a lot of guys make the mistake of thinking that it's all your responsibility, and like if she's bored, you somehow failed. If there's a lull in conversation, you somehow failed. No, women also have an obligation to carry on that conversation. Now, if they genuinely like you, they will ask this, and you don't have to worry about it. And it's just a regular, nice, natural conversation, and a conversation among equals. I would still, however, talk less about you and more about them in general, though. But if she asks you, "But well, what do you do?" By all means, tell her she's interested. And they also can't become invested in you if you don't tell them a little bit about yourself. So it really is that strategy of 3 to 1 or asking people about themselves. You don't want to overdo it where you're interrogating them with questions, but you have natural like they say something, have a follow-up with that. And I think the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So you're not asking interrogative questions, you're asking follow-up questions like a good interviewer would. But inevitably, they're going to want to get to know you, hopefully. If they do, that's good. This technique has served its purpose, and you no longer have to rely on it because the dynamics of the relationship or the conversation have changed to where now it's more equitable. The person is now asking questions about you. But this is a very important thing, in which somebody older than me would have told me, but I was brought up by boomers. If you are pulling teeth with a girl, and I never understood why girls would say, like, you meet them. This is back in the time where you meet in person, and there would be an element of charisma and charm and a little bit of a spark. Oh, do you want to go? Yeah. And then they'd show up on the date, and then they just sit there. Like you were literally there to entertain them. They don't have an interest in you. And to this day, I don't know why they went out. It doesn't matter. They wasted your time. But if you're pulling teeth with a girl, like, and she's not asking questions, and she somewhat hypocritically wanted to go on a date with you, like you're there on a date and you're pulling teeth and she's not asking questions or expanding, you end it. I mean, you literally like, okay, you literally stop it. Don't finish it off. You don't owe this person. This person wasted your time. You're wasting her time. You just say, yeah, you know what? You're obviously not having a good time. So I'm going to pay my tab. I'm going to get out of here. And then you leave. And ironically, that has resulted in girls also, I just was told I was pretty and amazing and brave, just existing. I didn't know I had an obligation here. Although that is the exception. For the most part, girls just aren't that interested in you, and you'll find that out. I to this day, why'd you go on the date? A lot of people will say food, but I'm like, I didn't have expensive dates when I was young. But that was very common, where it was just like, okay, and you are talking to a wall. And then don't waste your time. It's not your fault. Don't feel bad about it. You should be a little bit perturbed that someone lacks the social graces to maybe participate in conversation, but then you walk away. But it doesn't sound like you have that problem, because you've got people interested. You're making them feel good about themselves, maybe. And so it creates a more welcoming environment. So people are more social, male or female. But the point is that's step one. Ideally, step two is the girls then talking to you and asking you about yourself. And I'm not saying you completely abandon that strategy, but that strategy very specifically is for initial contacts. And then, but it's still good to hold on. It's good not to talk about yourself too much. And there's a third category, and Seinfeld mastered this. It's called nothing. You talk about nothing, because this now allows you to demonstrate philosophy, humor, wit, observation, intelligence. It's just, what do you talk about? You talk about nothing. So you don't necessarily interrogate her about her, nor do you brag about yourself. You just like, oh yeah. I mean, it could be something as vapid as, oh, did you watch that TV show? Like, I don't watch TV. Like, what, do you watch TV? And, oh, this thing, what are your favorite movies? Although that's kind of a shtick question, but you don't have to talk about each other. You could just talk about stuff. And that's not talking about you. So again, you don't seem arrogant, right? And you're not talking about her, so you don't seem desperate. But the larger point is, once you get to the point that you would be on a date with a girl, she should then take over. Imagine that. Half the, not the R word. Oh no, anything but the R word, responsibility. No. And about the only other thing that I could think of where you want to ask girls question about herself, obviously, but not seem like too interested, meaning simpy or desperate. And I'm not, I hate this because it's so unconscious and I don't waste my time really worrying about it. But a lot of things could be body language. Kind of like, and that now you got to dedicate a bunch of other processing power to keep aware of that. Like, how am I posing? That kind of thing. And I think if you're not like interface the entire time and just like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And no, and maybe occasionally say one or two things about yourself. But as long as you're not desperate and interrogating her, I and you're asking logical, interesting follow-up questions where the point of the conversation is what of interest is going to be said, not that you're desperate about her per se. You know, like a perfect example, like, oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, what's that like? So you see, you're tangentially interested in her, but your primary interest is no. I want to know what's it like. Let's say she's I don't know, she's a sushi chef. I'm kind of curious. What is that like? Yeah, well, what's that like? So she's like, oh, he's not desperate about me, and you know, for example, never compliment. There's a perfect rule. You never compliment the girl. That is where you get too much interest. But you ask, what's it like? Well, yeah, do you go to school? Well, tell me about that. That's really interesting. Even if you got a feign interest, you should not feign it. You should develop an interest in, like, well, if it's something you've never heard of before, you've never gone down that path. Oh, you're a cop. Well, what's that like? Like, how's Police Academy work? Is it like the TV show? Um, Talking about her career, her hobbies, the profession, so you understand it. You're talking about that tertiary subject, not necessarily her. So you're not giving her the weird vibes of her. You're interested in how that topic works or how that thing works. And that is how you could still ask her about her, but not seem too interested. But a lot of it also, I would say, is body language, where like just don't sit on pins and needles looking at her like, oh, you know. I know this is stupid. In the olden days, I would always sit in a booth, table or booth, because on a table, you're sitting in a chair, you have to look at her or sit next to her or anything like that. With a booth, you're sitting across, and and it's more comfortable this way. I would sit with my back up against the wall and my legs out, sticking out on the booth. Then I'm looking that way down the booth, and she's over here, and I got my arm up. I'm like, yeah, da 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 da, and I'm not looking at her. And you can kind of, so that is a easy physical move you can do. But as long as you're not interface, it just, be somewhat aware. Like, am I leaning into her too much? Am I hinging on her? Let her talk. Don't respond so quickly. That kind of body language is kind of another thing you can do. But I would say in terms of topics, talk about things she likes, not she. Talk about stuff about her, not her. If that makes any sense. Yeah, but otherwise, like the examples you gave me, you're doing great. That's great. And obviously you gave an example of a guy. Um, and that's certainly going to help you in your career and your profession. Where you're the guy that people, oh yeah, send Frank out. He's good with people. I like hanging. Who doesn't like hanging out with Frank? All right, any super chats? Modern Life Cappy. There's supposed to link to the go to the search, Fearless Trader, search the Clary School of Economic Philosophy. It's through Teachable. Sign up for that school, and then I'll send you an email later through Teachable, through the School of Economic Philosophy. All right. But I won't be announcing it. The class won't be, there's no link to the class because I haven't opened it yet. You got to wait till tomorrow. But if you're interested, sign up for that school. You don't have, you got to email me directly. I can put you on the list directly and just like send you the link when the school opens or the class opens, but that's it. Yeah, here. If it's awkward, cringe, annoying, difficult, and or boring, just leave. I do it. I would have saved so many years of life just walking out on dates like that. You could tell how much she likes you by how quickly you're looking at the top of her head. I mean, it literally would be like you'd ask a question about her and there'd be silence. And I was like, okay, you could ask a question about me now, or you could say something. And if they just said, and you would almost be able to tell, like picking them up on a date. Like, this is going back so far in the past. You go to a movie sorry, yeah, you go to a movie first, then the dinner, because then you have something to talk about. This is pre 101. This is preschool Rollo Tomasi. Tomasi. So you'd have something to talk about. But you would know almost on the way to the movie if that was going to work or not. So to save yourself the time, not to mention the pain, it's very painful because especially as a young guy, you think you're screwing up, you think you're not interesting, and for the most part, you're not. You're a young guy, you don't have anything interesting going on. This is where I think coffee dates are very important. This is where the internet now, where you do your Skype dates, those I'd say are mandatory before you even go to coffee, because coffee is a time commitment, and then you're sitting there, and does the girl talk? And girls, I don't know, we have some females that have questions about dating advice. It's like, hey, you're equal now. Start asking questions. You better talk. He is not there. He's not a wiener dog with tassels on to entertain you. Yeah, that was, I did not miss that stuff. I did not miss that. All right. There you go. We'll see you guys later. Toodles.